brothers and sisters, welcome back. Now we begin the panel discussion on theological formation. The moderator for this panel discussion is Father Valan Anthony S.J. Father Valan is the professor of scripture in the Faculty of Theology in Vidyajyoti, Delhi. Hearty welcome, Father.
God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
Baruch Adonai.
Yom Yom.
Yom Yom.
Baruch Adonai.
So, my dear brothers and sisters, what a lovely day we celebrate today, Valentine's Day. A day that celebrates love, of course. Shakespeare begins his 12th night like this: if music be the food of love, then play on. And of course, we want to sing music. We want to make music to the Lord. Eshpoch lefanecha et libi rodei befanecha ahavati ki Adonai Adonai Ata Adonai So we are celebrating the Golden Jubilee, SWARNA JAYANTI, not SWARNA celebrating the shift from Kurseong to Delhi. The celebrations continue. We have been listening to presentations on the various different values enshrined in the Constitution, the preamble of the Indian Constitution, and we have been attempting to theologize on them from various perspectives. Vidyajyoti aims at the transformation of the individuals and communities at cognitive, attitudinal, and behavioral levels. In this apostolic exhortation, Veritatis Gaudium, which binds all the ecclesiastical institutes, Pope Francis envisages a bold cultural revolution in our pontifical theologies, so that our students are equipped to take the church ad uscita, a church that goes forth. We have 4 panelists who will highlight, give insights on theological formation in today and specifically in India, South Asia. We have 4 speakers. We've got Sister Inigo, Father Argentate, Father Jose TJ, and Father Edwin Rodriguez. May I invite these eminent speakers to come on stage and take their places, please. Sister Inigo. So we thank you, dear sister and fathers, for accepting to be on the panel this afternoon. We want to felicitate your presence, your giftedness to us. So we want to call Sister Arti, Scholastic Alokeka, Scholastic Borson Hembrong, and Scholastic Vidyajyoti to honor them. So, Sister Arati, may I invite Sister Arati to honor Sister Rita. Invite Scholastic Alokeka, State College in Jubilee. Scholastic Borson Hempron. Scholastic Vidyajyoti, to honor Father Edwin Rodriguez. So the procedure is going to be like this. So we will listen to all the four speakers. Each speaker will get a time limit of 20 minutes to do the presentation. Now, afterwards, you may want to jot down the questions, clarifications, comments that you want to add at the end of the presentations. So now afterwards, you may ask the questions to any of the panelists. So first, we will listen to all the four speakers. So let's introduce Sister Inigo Joaquin, SSA. She is the former Superior General of St. Anne's Sisters of Madhuram near Chennai. She was also the Secretary of the Women's Section of National CRI. She represented the religions of South Asia at the Synod of Bishops on Religious Life. She is presently residing at Dwarka, Delhi, working as Prison Ministry of India NGO at Bihar prisons, besides animating various religious priests and the laity. She is a sought-after resource person for chapters, seminars, and travels widely in India and abroad, lecturing and giving retreats. We are honored to have you, sister. We would love to listen to you.
Good afternoon, my dear friends. Thank you, Father, for the introduction. The paradox is a non-theologian is invited to speak about theological formation in the challenging times. I don't know whether it is a privilege accorded to me or a mistake made by or I made a mistake of saying yes to the invitation. Anyhow, it's an honor for me to stand before the galaxy of so many theologians. Some years ago also the same day, February 14th, I don't know, every time Valentine Day, I was invited. By CBCI bishops. The CBCI meeting was held in Jamshedpur. Again, a non-theologian. I was asked to present a paper on theological and scriptural foundation for women empowerment. And then after finishing the talk, I came out, Cardinal Oswald of Bombay. He met me, he asked me, Inigo, where did you do theology? I said, I didn't do theology, that's why whatever I speak makes sense to everybody. Take it as a joke, because I have a great honor for theologians. The way you are contributing to the church. Therefore, my paper is purely from my own conviction, my own personal experience. So, I hope you have the text with you. So, Golden Jubilee. is a special event and a joyous occasion to thank God and to celebrate the impressive achievements Vidyajyoti has attained in the last 50 years. This also provides unique opportunity to reorient oneself with the fundamentals of theological formation. Furthermore, this is an appropriate time to rediscover Vidyajyoti's distinctive identity and also to revitalize its original spirit, taking into account the signs of the times. Let's understand today's theological formation in the backdrop of the global crisis warranted by COVID-19 pandemic and the bold initiative of convening Synod on Synodality by Pope Francis. Let's not forget, every crisis comes to teach us valuable lessons, provided it have a listening heart. Let's evaluate dispassionately the formation methods. Take a moment to ponder over what the Lord is asking of us in this seemingly most despairing situation. In October 2022, Holy Father Pope Francis, in his exhortation to those in formation in Rome, said, "Formation is a synodal journey in which the formees are called to listen to the Holy Spirit in order to discern how to help God's holy people." Foremost, 3 points is highlighted. Number 1, your theological formation should help you to cultivate constant dialogue with the Lord. Number 2, he urged them to find God in every human being by carefully listening to one another and to be prophetic witnesses. People need us to listen to their questions, anxieties and dreams so that we can better lead them to the Lord. And the third point Pope Francis highlighted was the mission of serving the poor, that is, taking Jesus' gospel to others, particularly to the most vulnerable and those on the peripheries of society. You are standing on the holy ground. The Lord said to Moses, "Vidyajyoti in Delhi for the past 5 years has been the holy ground for thousands of young people." Moses was asked to remove the sandals. 50 batches of brothers and sisters were asked to leave behind their wherewithal, their ignorance, and the darkness of their minds and hearts to encounter Jesus of Nazareth and to be his ardent followers. Vidyajyoti is not just a college of academics. It's not merely engaged in intellectual pursuits and scholarly attainments. Rather, it strives to assist the formees to gain spiritual and divine experience. They arrive at this theological center as empty vessels, seeking to be filled with the true knowledge and God experience. Undeniably, when they finally leave its portals filled with Vidya, the divine wisdom and God experience. Golden Jubilee celebration of Vidyajyoti is an opportune time to evaluate the theological formation in the context of the unprecedented challenges and drastic changes that are taking place, especially in India. Perhaps no other organization invests so much in terms of human and financial resources in the formation of its personnel as the church does. Lot of time, plenty of money, and a host of good personnel studied abroad go into your formation. Some of the issues affecting our society already have been highlighted by many speakers. Just to give a gist of, because our theological formation has to take into consideration the issues. Number 1, of late, there has been a phenomenal growth of religious fundamentalism in all religions, including Christianity. Number 2, Hindutva, converting India into a Hindu Rashtra where Muslims and Christians are treated as second-class citizens. Number 3, shocking gap between the rich and the poor. Number 4, spiraling unemployment, especially after COVID-19. People have become jobless, leading to further impoverishment of the poor. Number 5, increasing violence against women, Dalits and tribals, gender discrimination both in society and the church. 6, misuse of draconian laws to arrest social activists, student leaders, journalists and opposition parties who protest against the anti-people, anti-democratic policies of the government. 7, disastrous consequences of climate change and environmental destruction. As students of theology, if one is unable to respond to these challenges, what's the use of having theological foundation? I am presenting only 2 challenges because of time constraint. First challenge encountered to be God-experienced person, a seeker of God, and a mystic. Mysticism, mystical experience, contemplation, etc. are some of the topics we come across these days very frequently. People are reading more and more about St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Catherine of Siena, Thomas Martin, etc. in order to familiarize themselves with their lives and their mystic ways. These mystics attempted to understand the spiritual truths of life and the universe that are beyond the intellect by being in communion with God or by being absorbed into the divinity through contemplation. Mysticism is not about sitting for long hours in the chapel or reciting non-stop endless prayers. Mystics are those, the definition for a mystic, those who take God seriously and have experienced the heartbeat of Jesus. In other words, the one who radiates divine energy is a mystic. Our country is known for mystics. In 2011, when I was invited to attend the theological conference in Rome, I listened to Father Adolfo Nicholas, the former Superior General of Jesuits, who said, "Now the time has come that all we need to turn to the east. West is over," he said. "Turn to the east and learn their cultural and religious values. We should not be just known as people engaged in education or in healthcare or as social workers. Our every ministry is an evangelization ministry to teach the values of the reign of God. Our vocation is different. We are committed to a cause, and our mission is to present God through our very presence and ministries. Our institutions must be temples of learning, hope-giving centers, and we are called to be good news for others." On another occasion he had stated, "Asia has a lot yet to offer to the church, but we haven't done it yet. Maybe we haven't been courageous enough, or we haven't taken the risks we should." To be spiritual is not new to India. India is a country of God's seekers. In our land, experience is more important than mere intellectual attainments. People touch the feet of religious persons. Our God is real, concrete, authentic, and tangible. We can talk to Him and relate to Him like a friend relating to a friend. He is not a distant God, a vague figure. Our adorations, our prayers should impel us to mirror Jesus of Nazareth. Alas, we have started worshipping work and priding ourselves in being ever busy. In the name of hectic schedules and busy timetables, we have misplaced, they completely lost the beautiful cave experience. If our theological formation has succeeded only in producing or churning out eminent scholars, writers, professors and speakers, then it has miserably failed in the very essence of formation itself. Thomas Aquinas wrote his theology on his knees. Ignatius of Loyola wrote his spiritual exercises at Manresa Cave. Francis of Assisi founded his mendicant order, spending hours in contemplation in cave. Where and when and how did we lose this mystical dimension and thereby Jesus of Nazareth? Who is God in our context? The type of God presented in the Old Testament was time-bound and space-bound God. When Israelites had to wage war, they needed a strong warrior and a muscular man. So they imaged God as a male. But over time, the image of God has changed as the context changes. The need to decode our minds and to re-image God becomes crucial and essential. Earlier, the image of a legalistic God was promoted. But what image of God did Jesus come to proclaim? Is our understanding of God, Jesus, church appropriate and accurate, or is it a merely pedagogical? Which God Pope Francis is making visible? Pope Francis hails from the Latin American Church, and his theological formation made him a noble pastor and an endearing shepherd. What image of God do our theologians present? Does our theological formation transform them to be God-experienced, God-seekers, creative contemplatives, and mystics of our times? This is a challenge for our theologians today. Number 2. Does our mystical dimension steer us to be a prophet? Only a mystic can be a real missionary and visionary. A mystic alone can be a prophet. The world, especially India, needs prophets. A prophet is not someone who condemns and criticizes everybody and everything. A true prophet is one who is in intimacy with God and goes to people and saying, "Thus says the Lord," and faces the consequences for speaking the truth. A prophet is one who listens to God in silence and in suffering humanity. A prophet should experience God who identifies himself with the human beings. We come across instances in the Old Testament wherein God hears the cry of the poor over and over again. If we fail to hear the cry, then they will cry to God. God will hear their cry, then we will feel guilty. Listening to the poor is a conscious commitment to God. Does our theology assist in shaping, forming prophets to speak the truth, fight for justice, and actually involve itself in the daily struggles of our suffering brothers and sisters? I skipped the paragraph. The life of Jesus was a dynamic movement to heal the lost and the least, the sick, lepers, pagans, Samaritans, tax collectors, and those who are at the periphery. He walked not with the mighty and affluent people. His collaborators were not distinguished or accomplished people. It's apparent that we have lost this true Jesus of Nazareth. It appears to be at odds to see the Catholic Church accrediting a centralized place for worship. This certainly is not the church that Jesus envisaged. Pope Francis challenges our mediocre life. He says any member who sits in office and pushes papers, he doesn't want that kind of church, doesn't want a pristine church. I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting and dirty because it's going to the streets. The church which is afraid of taking a prophetic stand is a dead church. That's what he says. Let's not behave like custom officers. We should be field hospitals where the weak should be strengthened, the sick should be cured, the wounded should be healed. And God. He underscores the same message once again when he says, go to the peripheries and have the smell of the sheep. Are we willing to go to the peripheries today? Are we prepared to listen with passion to the cries of the prisoners, street children, the abandoned LGBTQ, refugees, trafficked children, etc.? Among the many deadly evils, human trafficking, a modern slavery, manifests itself as the most deadliest evil. Let us sensitize the fact that no one is born a slave. Therefore, our theological formation should consciously strive to foster a culture of respect for human dignity. Are we willing to encounter the wounded body of Jesus in all of them? This alone should be the end result of our theological formation. We need prophets like Father Stan Swami, who converted the theology into action in following Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus of Christians. Father Stan Swami once voiced, I can't be a silent spectator in the context of injustice happening in front of our eyes. As harbingers of God's reign and kingdom, are we progressing or regressing? Where is gospel spirituality? Are our Sunday services of any meaning? Which God are we preaching from our pulpits? Are our annual church gatherings, novenas attended by thousands a mere show? Shouldn't they be reviewed? Is worship divorced from life? The questions are many, but answers are few and far apart. As Pope Francis says, a priest who has studied perhaps a lot of theology and has 1, 2 or 3 degrees but has not learned to bring people to Jesus is ineffective. He will be a good scholar or professor, but not a priest. Along with imbibing the value system of Jesus and becoming integrated and emotionally and psychologically mature human persons, the theologians are expected to become effective leaders and facilitators. They should confidently interact with all sections of people without any distinction. I come to the conclusion. A word to formation of the formators. In the name of formation, many theologians have become mere information providing centers. More than the content of the formation program, it is the formator who is important. First and foremost, a formator needs to be a good human being who sets life as the finest example that a student can look up to. Formators shouldn't be mere lecturers or occasional counselors. They must share the life of the formees unreservedly and be open to their suggestions and criticism with the conviction that the real work of formation is between the formator and God. Formators are present to figure out what God wants the formees to do, to open their hearts to the action of the Holy Spirit. Pope Francis reiterates the indispensable role of formators, who teach more by the example of their own lives than by their words. He cautiously reminds the formators that they must continually renew their own configuration to Christ. As I conclude, a joke only. A student of theology went to see the eye specialist. Normally you are very young, you don't need to go to eye specialist, your eyes are okay. But this student went to meet the eye specialist. After checking the eyes, the doctor asked, "My dear young boy, how come your eyes are in very bad shape? Why you have strained them so much?" He said, "What to say, doctor? I was told to see God in my formators." And I tried and tried. Finally, I asked my He said, "Don't." Some years ago, concluding, the church consultation on formation in Kerala concluded, we have produced enough intellectuals, writers, people with doctorates, administrators and managers. Now we need to form mystics, real missionaries and better refined human beings among them. Let the Jubilee celebration of Vidyajyoti be an opportune occasion to reinvent and to revitalize the theological formation in India so that the church will have laity, priests and religious who are good shepherds following the model of Jesus of Nazareth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Inigo, for that lovely presentation. You finished on time. And you placed your argument in the context of Pope Francis's triple invitation of, emphasizing formation in terms of prayer, and then finding God in all things, and reaching the gospel to everyone, especially the least, the last, and the lost. And you also placed the challenges that are involved in today's situation. You highlighted 7 aspects of today's issues that need our attention. And then you posed 2 challenges. One is the importance of mysticism in our theological formation, and how this mysticism is not just within the closed doors, but it should take us to the peripheries. And then you talked about a former General Ralph Nicholas' depth dimension of theology. Our institution must be temples of learning, hope-giving centers. Ralph Nicholas always talks about the depth dimension of our ministries and formation. And then you invited us to decode our minds and to re-image God. That is essential, it's crucial to our context. And then you highlighted the second important aspect, challenge that you posed to us, namely to be prophetic in our theologizing, in our learning, so that we enable the church to go to the frontiers, boundaries, peripheries. And he invited us to ask the question, are we willing to encounter the wounded body of Jesus in all the negativities, shadows and death? And then you also challenged us, the formators are expected to be inspiring figures, not just academics, but also inspiring in terms of their commitment to their call. So it is a beautiful presentation of your perspective on theological formation in India. Thank you very much, sister. Shall we give a round of applause? So the next speaker is Dr. Arjun Tete, belonging to the Calcutta province of the Society of Jesus. He's been teaching systematic theology since 2015 at Jnanadipam, Pune. He has a bachelor's degree in Sanskrit from the University of Calcutta and master's degree in cultural anthropology from the University of Pune. He is a graduate with a doctorate in sacred theology from the Jesuit School of Theology of Santa Clara University, California, USA. From January 2021, he has been serving as delegate for formation of the Jesuit Conference of South Asia. He visits the common houses for formation as formation assistant to the Provincial of South Asia. He coordinates issues of common concern with province coordinators for formation, and he makes inter-provincial formation initiatives across provinces and common houses. Over to you, Father Arjun Tete.
From what Sister Inigo presented, I take the cue that she referred to, that is mysticism and prophetism, or mystique or the prophet. So may the Spirit of God continue to awaken and alert the prophet within us so that we are able to listen to what I present. My presentation will revolve around theological formation in India, challenges and opportunities. And my paper is geared towards the Jesuit formation. And let me begin by introducing it. I thank moderator Father Colin, my fellow panelists, and sisters. Theological education in India is offered by the Catholic Church. It is primarily meant for formation of priests for pastoral care of the faithful in the Church and for carrying forward the mission of Christ to all. It is expected that a certain number of essential theology subjects be taught in the theological faculties, either as requirements for priestly formation or for a theological degree or both. But the theological formation is not just to see if the person has finished this or that course of studies to be ordained a priest. It is not just to see if the person has comprehensive knowledge of basic Christian doctrines either. Theological formation ought to eventually prepare students to be effective proclaimers of the gospel in word and deed. Revisiting the paradigm shift in theologizing since Vatican II, I attempt to present few challenges and opportunities for theological formation today. Paradigm shift in theological formation. The Second Vatican Council made theology affect humans to transform themselves and the structures of society where humans could unfold their potentialities. The Church for the first time began to respond to the social, cultural, economic and political dimensions of human life and affirmed its mission to work for justice, fellowship, freedom of all people, especially the poor and the marginalized. The Second Synod of Bishops, 1971, on justice in the world made a notable contribution. The very purpose of shifting the theologate from Kurseong to Vidyajyoti in 1972 was to make the students of theology get in touch with realities of the world. In 1970s, the gospel of Jesus Christ, heard in the context of India with massive poverty and its pluriform religious traditions, became a message of freedom and a force for liberation. Theological formation enabled Christians to experience God's love revealed in Jesus as a force of liberation. Freed from greed and ambition and prejudice and empowered by the gospel of Jesus, individual Christians or in small groups moved out of elite institutions and well-provided city life into slums, villages, and the far-flung rural districts. They tried to give the poor a sense of solidarity and dignity by being with them in the struggle for justice. They endeavored to find the root cause of people's problems in order to build God's kingdom, where God's people can enjoy peace through experience of equality, justice, fellowship among themselves. It is expedient to reiterate the historical fact that the social doctrine of the Church emerged due to the interplay between the religious belief and social conditions, that is, reading the signs of the times. They began to read the Bible from the prism of contemporary realities and responded to them from faith perspective. Regional theology centers mushroomed across the country. During their theological studies, a few of the students formed a group called POT, Praxis-Oriented Theology, and stayed outside formation houses on an experimental basis. One such group was that of A.T. Thomas. They read books of liberation theologians who had popularized the phrase, preferential option for the poor. In 1974-75, the Jesuits had their General Congregation 32. Decree 4 of the congregation focused on their commitment to the promotion of justice, promotion of faith doing justice. Having been influenced by Decree 4 of the GC 32 and Jesuits like Sebastian Capen, Samuel Ryan, and George Suarez, these students discovered the radical dimension of the gospel. For them, holiness was to be present to the joys, sufferings, and pains of the people, especially to those who are on the edges and peripheries. Some of them have given up their lives for the sake of the kingdom and constitutional values they were committed to. We understand theologizing is a dangerous enterprise. Indian Christian theology seeks to discern, illumine, and support the people's struggle for human wholeness through freedom and dignity. According to Samuel Ryan, commitment to the oppressed and to their struggle for freedom, justice, and fellowship is the first act of our theology. This commitment is demanded of us by our faith commitment to God in Jesus Christ and calls for a serious critical reflection on the reality of our country. It serves the cause of the liberation of the destitute from all their shackles. An academic type of theologizing, divorced from action for change, is irrelevant. Theologizing ought to be faith that does justice. Following the same theologizing trajectory, Vijay has been imparting theological formation, integrating human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral dimensions. In his inaugural address this year, P.R. John, the principal of Vidyajyoti, lauded the learning experience at Vijay. Quote, "A vital part of the learning experience at Vijay isn't only confined to Vijay campus. The world itself is our classroom. The students extend the learning in many locations in Delhi, National Capital Region, through field experiences, direct contact with the urban poor, slum dwellers, rickshaw pullers, children on the street, domestic working women, dharnas, visiting the prison, pilgrimages, and academic exchange programs. The essence of Vijay is an impulse towards innovation and transformation. Our college primarily focuses on making our students good human beings to be at the service of humankind, especially embracing the poor and the needy," unquote. The Karma-e-Muhabbat, a prophetic movement of Mr. Harsh Mandir, has taught Vijay fraternity to redeem their theological education in India so that priestly and religious training goes into head and heart of the future priests and leaders of the church. In myriads of ways, Vijay has been enabling students to be good human beings. Any stage of formation involves aspect of information, that is classes, conferences, formation, that is socialization in daily life of the formation houses, and transformation, internalizing the religious values so as to live by inner conviction rather than by external compulsions. Transformation for mission is considered to be the ultimate goal of formation. Hence, theological formation is a process of transformation for mission in mission. But what is the mission today? Challenges to theological formation today. Theological formation makes men in formation conscious of the process of liberation. But looking at the challenges of mission, many tend to become cautious and calculating, to prefer well-established institutions and ministries of the church, serving largely the elite of the country. Joseph Mutton rightly observes, quote, "There was a time in the 70s and 80s of the last century when young religious were eager to take up ministries in favor of more deprived, going through more difficulties and suffering. Now, except for few women religious, by and large, people seem to tend towards more comfortable, secure ministries. Some who have been vociferous and radical liberationists during their years of theology soon settle down to well-established colleges and other institutions," unquote. We do hear this remark so often. Before his ordination, he was so good. Now what has happened? The exposure program to social realities held during theological formation years do not seem to guarantee a lasting and definite transformation in many. natural inclination to comfort and avoiding any kind of uncertainty in life seem to subdue their fervors and dreams. Another area of concern is what we still go by rote learning and exclusively lecturing method to a large extent. This encourages passivity, lack of interest, and minimum responsibility among the students. They become minimalists. Here and there it is being heard or said that one can pass the exams without much effort. We need to do a better job integrating the different dimensions of theological formation, and I think we have still a long way to go to respond to the goals of intellectual formation set by the society. Yanadi is acutely understaffed. Vidyajyoti has adequate staff, but it does not have many professors and readers. We need staff members who have the time and skill to accompany young people in formation. We need to create formators who not only can listen to young people, but who also can help them to listen how God is calling them. Accompaniment is an art, and it certainly is not a science, and it is not possible if the formators are too busy or too attached to their own views. Social media and digital technology has done wonders in our life and ministry. However, they have also destroyed real creativity, depth and discipline in many. Digital world offers cozy setting for those who want to escape the real struggle of life. Addiction to media gadgets has killed the capacity for prolonged and in-depth study habits in many. Cut, copy and paste are steadily replacing original thought and production of new knowledge. Perhaps with the chat GPT again, the things will be more easier. It is matter of concern that the number of students in licentiate courses practically in all streams, both in Yanadi and VJ, is falling. In fact, VJ does not have a licentiate program for some time now. It is expected of a Jesuit scholastic to spend on theological studies at least 4 entire academic years. It is also very desirable to do licentiate so as to master some particular concrete theme. In fact, comprehensive exams were anticipated at the close of 3rd year, believing that some would continue to do their licentiate. The world is changing rapidly, and we cannot be sure how global dynamics will play out. We need to form men who will be flexible, creative and discerning, and able to adapt realities we cannot imagine. Father Kolbenbach says, quote, "An intellectual formation that is both thorough and of high quality, especially in theology, is demanded by the very nature of the ordained ministry and by the requirements of the new evangelization to which the Lord calls the church and by the challenges of our mission." Unquote. Our theological studies ought to give our men the intellectual depth and breadth they will need collectively to meet the challenges. Opportunities for theological formation. The Universal Apostolic Preferences, UAPs, are the mission from the Holy Father and the Church for the society. It is a great opportunity for us to incorporate them with theology at the academic level. The link is necessary in order to enhance the apostolic and spiritual renewal we are looking for. These are also the points expressed in the Conference Apostolic Preferences, which are a reflection on the mission in our conference, help us evolve to foster peace and reconciliation, ensure quality education, promote ecology and justice, accompany youth, and encourage Ignatian spirituality. They are the paradigms of formation in South Asia. Intellectual depth is a key dimension that must be integrated into these preferences. This requires moving toward more adult pedagogy, critical thinking, greater integration of the apostolic context and academic study, preparing men for our contemporary mission, human and social sciences, interreligious dialogue and care for our common home, and improving our diversity and interculturality in our formation houses. The role of ordained ministers in the church is to be men of spiritual and intellectual depth, learned men who are well prepared and articulate, who can move beyond the surface of things into deeper meaning because they have the opportunity to study and do research. Along with being well informed and well formed, they need to be well equipped in humaneness. But as Jesuits, we must be men of prayer and discernment as well. If we are not first and foremost men of prayer and discernment, we might be, in the short run, very successful and productive in mission and ministry. But in the long run, we run the risk of the bottom falling out of things. Conclusion. Theological formation is intended to make us effective proclaimers of the gospel in word and deed. Our situation, as Sister Inigo mentioned, today is a ticking time bomb. And precisely for that, or because of that, it is full of opportunities for mission. To go forth towards this desired transformation of the self for mission, we need to embrace Pope Francis's often repeated promotion of boldness. Complacency is seductive. It tells us that there is no point in trying to change things, that there is nothing we can do, because this is the way the things have always been, and yet we manage to survive. Let us rethink of our usual way of doing things. Let us open our eyes and ears, and above all our heart, so as not to be complacent about things as they are, but unsettled by the living and effective word of the risen Lord. Thank you.
Thanks, Father Arjun for the precise presentation of the challenges that as Jesuits in South Asia we face in theological education. You began with talking about the paradigm shift that Vatican Council II invited us, namely to get in touch with reality. We need for a paradigm shift from academic theological education to a practical, lived-in, contextual perspective of theology. You talked about the POT, practice-oriented theology, and you emphasized the radical dimension that's needed in today's world. And you also highlighted a number of challenges, namely careerism. We talked about careerism, we talked about mediocrity, and then challenges because of the digital world and social media, lack of interest in theology at the master's level, and then you invited us to theologize and equip ourselves, keeping the universal apostolic priorities, preferences in mind, and then invited the need for intellectual depth in our theological formation. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause. So we have the next speaker. Students, please kindly jot down questions, clarifications, comments that you want to add in any of the observations made by the speakers, so that the second part becomes interesting. The third speaker we have is Father T.J. Jose. He's a Catholic priest of the Archdiocese of Delhi. He has done his BTH from JD, Pune, and MTH from Vidyajyoti, Delhi. After his ordination in 2003, he's been a parish priest in various parishes of the Archdiocese of Delhi and served as secretary to many diocesan commissions. He was also the rector of Pratiksha, the major seminary of the Archdiocese of Delhi. At present, he is the secretary of the Commission for Theology and Doctrine, Archdiocese of Delhi. He teaches systematic theology at Holy Trinity Regional Seminary, Jalandhar, Punjab. Right now, he is also the manager of St. Mary's Senior Secondary School, Delhi, and is a parish priest of MPS Church, Delhi. Over to you for the teaching.
My dear friends, we have already heard about theological formation in an Indian context, and then other teachers spoke about, given us a history perspective of theological formation in India. I'm, I think, a bit deviating and speaking about a particular aspect of formation, and that is ecumenical formation. We can speak about diocesan formation, religious, or even lay formation. To include all these lay faithful, seminarians, priests, and religious, the whole people of God, we can think about this aspect of ecumenical formation of the people of God. To start with, there can be 4 ways this ecumenical formation is done. The first is learning and being aware. Actually, the whole ecumenism of life, as we are born in a context, we have lived in a context, our neighborhood, maybe our catechism or youth programs, orientations, in and through all that, what takes place is called ecumenism of life. And there we have this ecumenical formation and being aware that what is our context of Christians in India. The second way it can take place in ecumenical theological education, and that is what happens in Vidyajyoti, in the major seminaries of India. Abroad it can happen in Catholic universities, where they have courses, they have seminars, they have workshops, they give degrees, diploma, bachelor or up to doctorate, and that comes as ecumenical theological education. There are also many institutions, maybe councils or commissions, or maybe dicastery, a real institutional ecumenism. That also happens, and it is there. There are international centers, there are so many national centers. We can count on National Council of Churches in India at Nagpur. We have Ecumenical Christian Center in Bangalore, Ecumenical Development Center in Nagpur. We have EFI in Delhi. We have the Council of Evangelical Churches of India in Delhi. So we have ecumenism of life. We can have also this type of institutional ecumenism, where we have libraries, we have seminars, workshops, documentation takes place about each church or ecclesial communities or denominations. So a lot of research, paper, books coming together, sharing ideas or speaking about what is ecumenical dialogue, especially in the Indian context. The fourth way, and the very important thing which was spoken by both panelists, that is something what should happen after you have learned, you have gained a degree, and that is the ongoing ecumenical formation, a lifelong ministry of dialogue, a lifelong commitment. And Father Victor is here, how if he is involved in the dialogue with the Muslims, it does not just one big presentation or one credit course. It has to go beyond, where there is a ongoing formation taking place. It may be a lay person, maybe for a seminarian, maybe for a priest or a religious. It is ongoing ecumenical formation for everyone. Few criteria, theological criteria for ecumenical formation. As every aspect of formation is important, I have just wrote down few things. For the first things, how we understand one's own faith and tradition, how we are open to others' faith and tradition. Sometimes we are quite narrow-minded. We know about our tradition, our faith, and then how open we are towards others. Maybe mainline churches, sometimes maybe ecclesial communities of these Protestant churches, or maybe a small denomination, maybe a small Pentecostal church. How we can relate with them, trying to understand their view on scriptures, their view on their own aspects of faith and tradition. Secondly, deepening and having a mutual understanding, that means positive and negative. Yes, many a times we as Roman Catholics, we have that superiority complex in that, yeah, we know everything. I have got a BTH, I have got this MTH, I have got a doctorate, and this Pentecostal pastor, he has done some Bible study from somewhere. But no, if you have a desire to have a dialogue, especially in this ecumenical field, you need to understand others' perspectives, their faith journey, their traditions, and how they understand Ecclesia, understand the church. Yes, that's why it is all about metanoia and kenosis. As I said, once we know our past, the Crusades or other aspects of how we have behaved with the Protestant churches and all that, there has to be an aspect of metanoia in this ecumenical formation. Yes, we have made blunders. There are times we have made mistakes. And then kenosis, knowing others and becoming one with them. And this metanoia and kenosis will lead us towards real koinonia, the communion ecclesiology, coming together and saying that yes, we have one faith, we have one baptism, we have one Jesus, and then how we can go about it and how we can go ahead preaching Jesus. The self-understanding and the understanding the other, both are very important. As we heard about challenges before, that this othering aspect is very much prevalent in modern context, and therefore understanding oneself and understanding the other, and not othering others, but saying that yes, we all are children of God. The aspects of fullness, holiness and truth. Yes, we proclaim Catholic Church as one holy Catholic and apostolic church, but how you understand these four pillars of the church, how you understand that we are one holy Catholic and apostolic, and then how I am going to relate with other ecclesial communities, with other denominations, and an honest and sincere revisiting of other ecclesial traditions. And therefore, the whole ecumenical formation is a new way of being church in the modern context, especially after the Second Vatican Council. We received this as a mandate that we have to go ahead towards our sister churches or towards other ecclesial communities, towards these small Pentecostal churches, and be having a dialogue with them so that we relate with them. Now coming to, we also have the whole theme of constitution. So based on this, what I have said about ecumenical formation, I'd like to give one example, and then we will see how much we are into this ecumenical formation. I hope you heard about a small community in India called Anglo-Indian community. Is there anyone here, Anglo-Indian? No. So a small minority Christian community in India. The history will go back to the British Raj, and at present, if you think about their life and religion, there are so many books and articles. If you have a desire to read about them, especially about religion, most of them are of CNI or CSI churches. And then we also have a very good number of Roman Catholics, and many times they are also identified as like a Tamil Anglo-Indians or Mallu Anglo-Indians, or we have Bengali Anglo-Indians, or people from Jabalpur, or people from Lucknow. So that way they have those Christians called Anglo-Indians, and then they are identified from where they are, of their birthplace. And if you read more about them, you also find that how they also, in a way, humiliated many a times. There are words used for them, Firangi. Some people call them Pariya, and in some places, Parangi. All these are, in a way, slang words through which people humiliate these Christians, our fellow brethren in Christ. We also coming to read, if you read Article 366 of the Indian Constitution, it defines them as follows. An Anglo-Indian means a person whose father or any of whose other male progenitor in the male line is or was of European descent, but who is domiciled within the territory of India and is or was born within such territory, or parents habitually resident therein and not established there for temporary purposes only. So we have this Article 366 which speaks about their identity as how they have a descent from they have a European descent. One very important thing, coming back to the Constitution, Article 331, it gives them a special privilege. According to Article 331, Anglo-Indians have 2 members of Parliament, and they also have 1 MLA in the state legislative assemblies. And therefore we find that how it was maybe the Britishers, those who were going away, and then at the same time our forefathers, those who wrote the Constitution, felt that yes, there has to be some mention about them and some privilege given to them, and therefore they were given 2 MPs and 1 MLA. If you think about their contribution in the nation building, you can read how they have contributed for education, in the armed forces, sports, cinema. If you think about olden times, railway, telecom, and postal service. In our Archdiocese of Delhi, we have one of the oldest mission, Rewari. Rewari actually was a railway station. Rewari, even now there's a railway station. And that used to be a hub of Anglo-Indians. Big mission stations where there were so many Anglo-Indians, and they have done their bit for nation building. They were contributing even now. And then, so just giving you how surely ecumenical formation, and then how much we are aware of our own Christian brethren. So one example I like to give that how these Anglo-Indians are there. We'll come back to the formation aspect, and then we shall revert back to Anglo-Indians. So coming back to ecumenical formation, we have few official documents, Unitatis Redintegratio from the Second Vatican Council, Restoration of the Unity. Yes, a call given during the Second Vatican Council. All of us, starting from Pope, everybody has to try level best for this restoration. And then later, 1993 and 1997, we got 2 documents, the Directory for the Application of Principle and Norms on Ecumenism, and the Ecumenical Dimension, the formation of those engaged in the pastoral work. So these formations are not only about priests or seminarians, but for all. And then in that way we have these documents. We can go ahead, even canon law we can read, especially like to read CC 256. Father Vinay will know. The students are to be instructed about the needs of the universal church so that they may have a solitude for encouraging vocations, for missionary and ecumenical questions, and for other pressing matters including social problems. So the church and the documents always speak about how we should encourage and see we can have the foster ecumenism in our life. Coming back to Anglo-Indian, so I said yes, they're a small community. They had some constitutional privileges. They had their own rights given by But now recently something happened on 25th of Jan 2020. 126th constitutional amendment was brought by the present government. And then they removed the constitutional rights given to them about 2 nominated MPs in the parliament and 1 MLA. The whole thing is debatable. Yes, if you start a debate, yesterday Justice Kurian was here, or tomorrow Dr. Raju is going to come. Yes, they may say yes or no, pros and cons. They may be for it or against it. But I'm just saying that how many of us are aware of this small minority, a small community, and then how much we relate. Actually, we have a brother going to east of Kailash parish. Yes, brother goes to east of Kailash parish. Actually, in the parliament, they were saying that only 296 Anglo-Indians are left in India. Modi government, in the parliament, on paper, they said only 296 people are left. But actually, if you go to east of Kailash, Greater Kailash parish, there are 296, more than 296 Catholic Anglo-Indians are there. And then you also find same place, maybe minimum 500 Protestants, CNI and CSI Anglo-Indians. So yes, I'm just relating how our ecumenical formation can make us aware that yes, we have this small community amidst us and they are in need of justice. Again, debatable that they should get 2 MLAs or they should get 2 MP or 1 MLA. It's a debatable thing. But just to be aware that yes, it had a history in India. They were Christians. They were our brethren, our brothers and sisters. How much we are aware of their struggles. How they were, as I said, they were called with different names. They were dehumanized, and that way how we can relate with them and actually we can think about them. So in conclusion, that ecumenical formation also can help us to know and make sure that how we can all the Christian churches, denominations or ecclesial communities coming together, making this one faith, one Jesus, one baptism relevant for us, and then going ahead and working for the bigger, larger parivar, the human family in India. Thank you.
Thanks, Father DJ, for highlighting one aspect, a significant aspect in today's world, that needs to be underscored in our theological education, namely ecumenical formation. You talked about to be Christian, basically in today's world is to be inter-ecclesial, besides being inter-religious. You talked about ecumenism of life, and you highlighted 4 major areas, more disposition that we need to have as we are engaged in ecumenical formation. Namely, openness to the other faiths, metanoia, kenosis that leads us to koinonia, and then understanding the other, not othering the other, but understanding the other, and networking with other communities, and took up one issue of the Anglo-Indian community and their plight, and then how we need to be ecumenical in our disposition, attitude, and behavior. Thank you very much. All right, so with that we come to the last but one speaker, the last speaker, our own Father Edwin Rodriguez. Let me introduce Father Edwin Rodriguez. Who needs no introduction? Father Edwin Rodriguez is a Jesuit belonging to Bombay province. He has done Masters in Philosophy from Loyola College, Chennai, Masters in Economics from Mumbai University. He did his Masters in Biblical Studies from Jnanadeepa, Pune, and taught in Vidyajyoti College of Theology in Delhi for 3 years. After that, he did his doctorate in the Old Testament exegesis from St. George College, Frankfurt, specializing in the book of Psalms. Since June 2021, he has resumed his teaching in Vidyajyoti. At present, he is the editor of Vidyajyoti Journal of Theological Reflection. Over to you, Father Edwin. Come.
Good afternoon, everyone. Little bit sleepy. One little exercise, okay? Not action song. Okay? Repeat after me, okay? Ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Okay, all right. This did not work. This thing worked. All right, little bit movement is important. So, what does the Lord require of you? That is the topic that I will be talking about, theological formation. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? Micah 6:8. With this triple exhortation, 8th century prophet Micah sums up the teaching of 3 other 8th century prophets. He highlights Amos's concern for social justice, Hosea's longing for the loving communion with God, and Isaiah's constant call to become humble before God. Now in the New Testament, the community of Thessalonica was expecting imminent parousia, and they were getting restless at the delay in the Lord's coming. In that context, Paul gives them the triple exhortation to rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in everything. The teaching of Scripture is valid for all time. The triple exhortations of Prophet Micah and Apostle Paul are relevant for our times too. However, I wonder if Prophet Micah and Apostle Paul were to be sitting here with us. Now the seats are empty, so imagine they are sitting over there. They were to be sitting over here with us and taking part in panel discussion. What contextual concerns they might have raised, what exhortation they might have given us today. So we will try to deliberate on that. We don't have all the answers, but we can think together in this panel discussion, what is that exhortation maybe? And each of us, different panelists are trying to put their own idea. Keynote address, we got some ideas. Different papers, we got some ideas. And we need to find what does the Lord want of us. Pope Francis also asked we have to daily ask this question, what does the Lord want of us? The context of today's world and India. The theology we do is a contextual theology. We observe, discern, analyze local and national and global context, and after seeing and judging, we act to transform our context. Now today's world is described by this acronym VUCA, because it is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. In his highly enlightening book, The Revenge of Power, Moises Naim describes the phenomena of 3 P's. The P of polarization, populism and post-truth. And this book shows that the spread of right-wing politics is not limited to one country. It is a global phenomenon happening all over, everywhere. Because of its linguistic diversity and astonishing religious pluralism, India is a land of frightening complexity and startling contrasts. In our theologizing process, we use the optic of God, which is the option for the poor. That is why our focus group has been Dalits, Adivasis and women. Lately, we are also deliberating on the concerns of minorities, migrants and refugees. Our theological reflection is mostly aimed at analyzing the life-negating effects of communalism, caste system and corruption, and these 3 C's compound the age-old problems of illiteracy, inequality and unemployment, pushing the teeming millions into the massive pit of poverty and destitution. So we are all placed in this context. We can call it Kairos, we can call it Kali Yuga. However, precisely in this crucial time, we are called to be doers of the word, to be light of the world, to go about doing good like Jesus and to bear abundant fruits for the reign of God. Now let me share 4 incidents, recent incidents in our context. First, on 11 January 2023, Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar disagreed with the Supreme Court ruling that Parliament can amend the Constitution but not change its basic structure. You are talking about basic structure. 5 things are there. So it cannot change. And he disagreed. The chairman of Rajya Sabha. P. Chidambaram tweeted, the Honorable Chairman's views should warn every constitution-loving citizen to be alert to the dangers ahead. Second, on 26 January 2023, at Republic Day Parade, 10 out of 17 tableaus representing various states and union territories showcased temples and themes based on various Hindu gods. Third, on 4th February 2023, a Delhi court discharged Shahjil Imam and 10 more in Jamia Millia violence case, and the court order said that Delhi police had made them a scapegoat and legal proceedings were initiated in a cavalier fashion. Fourth, on 4th February 2023, P. Chidambaram questioned the scrapping of the Maulana Azad National Fellowship and accused the government of displaying its anti-minority policy as a badge of honor. To these incidents, we could add several other incidents of increasing demonization and marginalization of Muslims and persecution of Christians in Chhattisgarh and other parts of India. Unity in diversity has been a hallmark of India. India is known for a deep underlying fundamental unity, a unity which transcends innumerable diversities of blood, color, language, dress, manners and sect. This core identity is increasingly threatened. To regain and re-establish this principle of unity in diversity, which can be called reconciling the polarities. Reconciling the polarities is one of the major tasks before us. General Congregation 35 of Jesuit speaks about various polarities in Jesuit life, such as being and doing, contemplation and action, prayer and prophetic living, being completely united with Christ, completely inserted into the world. And it invites to keep this, reconciling these creative polarities. Along with these polarities, in a polarized world, we can think about several other polarities before us. I have placed some 11, we can add several more polarities. Authentically Christian, genuinely interreligious or ecumenical, uniqueness of Christ and pluralism of religion, scientific temper and religious insight, we can call secular sacred, folk and classical, global universal and local contextual, option for the poor and influencing the influential, loyalty and criticism, priestly and prophetic or mystic and prophetic, orthodoxy and orthopraxis, identity and change, fundamental rights and fundamental duties. Plurality and difference do not frighten us and should not frighten us. We celebrate the contradictions in India. We substitute either or, thinking of Aristotelian logic by a both and way of thinking by yin-yang interplay. Now, salient features of our theological formation, I will not explain them. They are given in the paper, you can read later on. Incarnational, interdisciplinary, interreligious and ecumenical, transformative and avoiding syncretism. This fifth aspect, I will say, although our incarnational, interreligious, interdisciplinary and transformative theological formation aims at interface, as Father Dosi was talking about, interface, encounter, dialogue and synthesis of various experiences, religions, disciplines, it is not syncretism, it is not khichdi, it is not hodgepodge, not mixture. Panikkar rightly states, the theologian is not an intermediary, a broker who brings two parties together. He is a mediator. He makes distinction between intermediary and mediator. Mediator is who literally standing under the spell of both strives towards a more complete understanding. Light of liberation from the Constitution. Vidyajyoti means the light of knowledge. In our process of theologizing, we are invited to scrutinize the signs of times and interpret them in the light of the gospel. Being the soul of theology, Bible's place is irreplaceable. However, we also believe that Spirit moves wherever she wills, and God speaks in many different ways. Besides the Bible, we have one more holy book for all Indians, which is sacred for majority of Indians at least, and that is Constitution of India. And we need to get the light of the Constitution in our thinking also, in our theologizing process. The Constitution was written in a very difficult context, a poor and illiterate India, which was divided by caste, religion and language, was badly scarred by the terrible wounds of partition. And the Constitution was written precisely to respond to this context, to offer to the Indians a distinct kind of moral imagination. Constitution served and continues to serve a pedagogical tool for building a new civic culture. Dr. Ambedkar was a social visionary and constitutional expert molded in one. He realized from his own bitter experience that without proper constitutional safeguards, the poor and the downtrodden couldn't savor the fruits of freedom. Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, former Chief Justice of India, mentions the invaluable contribution of Dr. Ambedkar as follows. Ambedkar had visions of not only a casteless society, but one in which there was gender justice, labor justice, economic justice, and equal distribution of opportunities. He stood not just for Dalits, but for all victims of inequality. Ambedkar once said, "I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved." Ambedkar proposed that the exercise of the franchisee was not a privilege but a right and advocated a universal franchisee. Ambedkar had special concern for minorities, and that is why we have special rights. He ensured special rights for them in the Constitution. The spirit represented in the preamble of the Constitution is further enshrined in the chapter of fundamental rights and directive principles. Article 46 speaks about the promotion of educational and economic interests of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other weaker sections. And it can be called the heart and soul of social justice. Constitution offers several checks and balances against the abuse of the power by the executive. Article 32 gives the citizens the right to move the Supreme Court. According to Ambedkar, it is the very soul of the Constitution and the very heart of it. Dr. Ambedkar considered the duties of the Comptroller and Auditor General, CAG, even more important than those of the judiciary. Now this CAG is called like a parrot in the cage. That is the situation what is happening. It was called also in the Congress government also CAG as a parrot, but at least it brought 2G and it was some scams brought out, but we did not get much out of it. In Desideravi, Pope Francis speaks about the formation for Eucharist and formation by Eucharist. The same can be said about Constitution. We need formation to understand Constitution. We need to be formed by the liberative values of in the Constitution. But we also need to be aware about the texts of terror in the Constitution. No scripture is free of patriarchal bias. We had that Vimal's question related to that. There are some texts, there are some oppressive texts in all the scriptures. We also have. In the Bible, we have several anti-women and violent passages which cause embarrassment to the believers. Pritam Singh, in his well-researched little questionable article also, shows us that although the Constitution has many admirable and historically progressive features, it has significant elements of retrogressive Hindu bias in it. And 5 examples are cited. He has cited several examples. Let me bring out 5. But they are also debatable. It's not straightforward. That Dr. Ambedkar desired a federal constitution. Justice Kurian but gave the other interpretation. He says he wanted the word union to be put. But he says no, he wanted federal federation, that word to be put. But here, there was centralization force was so strong that in the final document, the agenda of strong central government was pushed. And in the very first article, instead of federation, the word union was placed. The second thing is in Article 25 providing right to freedom of religion, Hindus were identified with the Sikh, Jaina and Buddhist religion, and Muslims, Christians, Parsis and Jews were excluded, and that in a way led way to the reservation which was given only to those belonging to the Indic religion. Article 48 speaks about the prohibition of the slaughter of cows and cows under the pretext of organizing agriculture and animal husbandry. For this, Article 44 mentions that the state shall endeavor to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code. That is in the Constitution, that there should be a uniform civil code. Fifth point is the issue of language. Article 343 and Article 351 speak about Hindi as the national language and the official language, and the state should promote it. State should promote Hindi. So these aspects are there which have come. And then I will quote from Pritam Singh: the Hindu, Hindi, Devanagari and Sanskrit lobby managed to put a powerful stamp on the Indian Constitution and thus inflicted a damaging blow to its secular content. Very strong language. We may not agree with it, but he has said that. In conclusion, the world we live is neither black nor white. It has various shades of dark and bright colors. Instead of spreading narratives of hope, we often become messengers of doom. Although placed in a highly unstable neighborhood, we Indians have mostly remained faithful to secular and democratic values and have not succumbed to military and majoritarian dictatorship. I believe it is because of the liberative principles in the Constitution of India. And that is why we have maintained our sanity in the midst of tensions and frenzies, and we still have hope. There are several secular-minded, there are several people who are swearing by the constitutional values in our India. On the Republic Day, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge tweeted, "Republic Day is a solemn occasion to rededicate ourselves to the Constitution and its values." On the occasion of 76th Independence Day, there was a campaign we all know, Har Ghar Tiranga, and we need to, now many people are saying we should start this campaign, Har Ghar Samvidhan. We should also be well educated in Samvidhan, in Constitution. The words of the then President K.R. Narayanan, while speaking in the Central Hall of the Parliament on the occasion of the celebrations of the completion of 50 years of our Constitution on January 27, 2000, are very relevant today. He said, "Today, when there is so much talk about revising of the Constitution or even writing a new Constitution, we have to consider whether it is the Constitution that has failed us or whether it is we who have failed the Constitution." So finally, let the following statement be our guiding exhortation, triple exhortation: being formed for the Constitution and by the Constitution, making our theology public, and reconciling the polarities in and through existential incarnation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Father Edwin Rodriguez, for making us do introspection. What does the Lord require of me, of us? He began with this weightier aspect of the law, spelled out in Micah 6:8, and then he also took up the text from Paul, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16 to 18, and placed those challenges in the context of VUCA, capturing the present reality in which modern world lives. He talked about 4 incidents from the recent history that underscore the polarity that's involved in our democracy, the living out of it. And he talked about 10 other polarities that are to be reconciled. And then salient features of theological formation, 5 of them you highlighted, and eventually you made a journey into some finer aspects of the Constitution and how there are complementary values, biblical perspectives that can be figured out in the constitutional principles and highlighted how we need to reconcile and then go make our theology go public. Thank you very much. So let's give a round of applause to all the speakers. So it's been a long session, obviously listening to 4 speakers, but 4 different perspectives were highlighted. Obviously, one sister went into a more prophetic, mystical prophetic dimension of theological formation. Father Arjun captured the challenges that are involved in today's theological formation in India, and Father talked about another important aspect of ecumenism. And then Father Tredwin, as I told you, took us into made us journey through some of the kind of weightier matters of the law, quoting Micah and Apostle Paul. So the floor is open for questions, clarifications, comments, and further reflections. So, yes, Father Pierre John. So please direct your question to any one of the panelists so that they know who is expected to respond first. And others can obviously compliment. It's not that the question is addressed only to those that in particular individual. Okay, Father Pierre John.
I thank all the panelists for your presentations. And allow me to begin. Just 5 days ago, I was invited by the Brahma Kumaris to be with them on the day when the President of India had come to inaugurate their program of women as a foundation for a value-based society. That was the theme. I wanted to be there for 2 hours, but I spent with them 6 hours learning from them in their retreat center, including happened to meet many of their leaders, Shivani and all the others. And of course my questions move around, but I'd like to begin this. Sister Inigo's paper, certainly thought-provoking. And I was thinking, can we let go the reins now? What's happening in the formation centers? Gone are the days, certainly Jesus invited many disciples, many men and women, but of course 12 were with him very closely. But today the time has come, I think, after spending my 15 years of Information House. Of course, deeply, as a heart of heart, I would like to return to the missions. Though formation is a mission, but move to the places. I ask myself, we have reached a stage where men cannot form men. Can women take up formation or informing the grace? Because we are talking of the context where we require merciful priests, compassionate priests, prophetic priests, and long experience in the church of 500 years, right from the Council of Trent, which has come up with this model of seminary formation. And today church is rocked by the various problems. And surprisingly, none of you touched on the clericalism. Clericalism is an issue. I think this is rocking now the church. And if you are looking for new models, can we hand over these formation centers to women to form men? Of course, priesthood that we cannot touch. Bishop G is here, the church. I myself teach priesthood here, so I'm looking careful on that area still. So that is one question. Secondly, for Arjun, yes, we were talking about this whole question of our Jesuit formation centers. But how do we address the issue of brain drain that is taking place? Earlier we were talking a lot of engineers, medical personnel, all they were going. But we are depleting our formation centers by protecting the Roman houses or Western American seminaries, etc. And to my knowledge, for the last 10, 12 years, we might have sent about 75 Jesuits, either in Rome or in France or in America. Many of them have completed BTH studies. They came back to their provinces. Have we ever done a study on these students who have completed their studies, basic studies? Because at a certain point of formation commission, we said, basic studies have to be done in our soil. Theologizing in our soil is very important. Yes, for the post-graduation and for the further PhD studies, we send them outside. This is the second, how do we look at that? because there are certain inner contradictions in our own formation centers. And thirdly, to Father TJ, nice that you touched on ecumenism, but Delhi is a fertile ground for engaging ourselves in the civil society. And Vidyajyoti never compromises on it. Our students even pulled from the classrooms to go and attend a lecture or to go to Jantar Mandir and different places. We never compromise that at Vidyajyoti. Suppose a group of students come, would like to go to JNU, even if there are classes, we tell them go 3-4, go and attend. So, ecumenism, is it only still church-centric? Can we push this into to see civil society where we have a lot of contacts with Harshmander, Veda Bhatkar, all these people? How do we look at the church, widening the church into civil society? And finally, I think this is a challenge, nothing new for us. This was there in the apostolic times. Jesus chose the 12 and then he made them as the columns of the church. Ignatius and his companions, they were very poor priests but learned men. How to reconcile this? Often standing alone say, the time has come for Vijay to move from civil lines. Because civil lines, contextually, this is a British Raj. Civil lines was known in 1930s, 1938, this was the place where British was ruling. So therefore, what would be the future of Vidyajyoti in terms of, because here we have security, 24 hours current, water, in front of us, governor security is there. So how do we think about it? Thank you.
So, Father Pierre John has taken what I said very seriously. Write down the questions. Very good, I appreciate that. So, one question to each of you panelists. We'll have 3 more questions. Okay? All right. Yes, Brother Alok.
I would point to any one of this question. You're free to this. I'm just tossing. What are some reasons why the formees, us, are more inclined towards apostolates which are said to be comfortable and institutional, and not towards more challenging apostolates like that of Father Constant Levens, who picked up law as his tool, or Father A.T. Thomas and Father Stan, who opted prophetic life and not just life death?
You can start responding, then questions will emerge, more questions. Yes, sister, you want to speak?
No, I'm very happy Father John Pierre John said whether our formation centers can be taken up by women formators. You know, in Dharmaram I was there last month. So many sisters are doing theology, doctoral studies, postdoctoral studies. I was wondering, my God, we never heard this some 10-15 years ago. I mean, centers are open for women. They do the studies. I asked them, what are you going to do after this? So many are studying. No, we want to go and teach in the seminary. They say we have enough for our priests, so we have no place for women there. You know, they are not ready to accept because more priests are sent abroad and educated. When they come back, they are unemployed actually. So we are looking for employment only, not the formation actually. But as you said, I was asked to preach on Women's Day, International Women's Day in our cathedral once. And then I told the Archbishop, I will preach, you don't preach again over that. Otherwise we will preach again, they will say something else after that. So, and everything will be dilute. And then I will be praying our Father in a different way. Please allow me to pray. Archbishop said, I won't interfere at all in your matter. You please do it. Like that, how many will be there? So open to that. If this happens, it's not only women running centers, both men and women, as you said, clericalism. A priest was saying to the sisters, remember, you are all working under me. The sister said, Father, we are not working under you, you and we are working under God. So if that we all realize it, I think each one will contribute for each one's back. growth. The church will benefit. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Just to continue where Sister Inigo left. That is, here in Vidyajyoti itself, when I was a student, I think there were more religious sisters who were students here, and now I think the number is depleting. Again, I thought one could be asking the question, why is that so? Now, moving to what you asked me directly with regard to the brain drain, or what has been in terms of the data collection of the people who went abroad and came back having graduated from, say, the universities abroad. We don't have any data. And personally, for the place that I come, or the office that I hold, that we don't really have any kind of control over the provincials who send their men to study abroad. The issues have been raised, and just now, as I mentioned to you, saying that why is it that no students are returning despite having this 3 years of excellent theologizing in Vidyajyoti or in Yanadip, that they do not come back to the same institution for their, say, the lesson sheet. The question is, perhaps, do we need to raise up our standards so that the others are beginning to come here? Not only if not the Indian students, at least the other students begin to come here. Something that, as Sister was mentioning, that it is time for West to look at the East. Something can be raised up in order to bring people from elsewhere to our side. Personally, I don't have any answer to as to what happens to the people who come back after being trained abroad. Thank you.
Father has asked about how we can collaborate with the civil society. Yes, especially in Delhi context. Maybe the starting point is that how we Christian churches can come together. And then maybe a second step where there is the aspect of common witness, where we include the civil society, the NGOs, people working for justice and other organizations that all come together, and then we have a cause for which we stand. So surely a starting point may be ecumenical, and then we go towards the interreligious, we go towards the aspects of justice, and then collaborate and see a common witness for a common cause, we all stand together. So surely there has to be an aspect of collaborating with everyone.
So from civil lines to where? We go back to Kalsium, that is what some people might say. And looking at today's tendency, we are going back to pre-Vatican II times. As Father rightly mentioned, Father Arjan, that how we are becoming more and more institutionalized. We are losing that fervor. Okay, that is entire, it is all. We need to do serious reflection on that. Whether we are, let us say, we had Father Aloysius Fonsaca. He was missionary at the old age in Afghanistan and all. He died, I think, in Afghanistan only. So he used to say, we should have our theology on the horseback. Now, always keep moving. Where we are settled down so much and so badly, and then in last so many years, nobody has gone out to live in the slums. So that is, we need to maybe rethink, restart. Maybe we cannot physically move our presence, but at least that kind of a movement. I tried staying during my scholastic days in one slum for 4-5 months. My health condition is bad with cold and all, but that is why I had to come back. Otherwise, there was in my 3rd year. So maybe we can have like some experiments, leaving our safe and secure place and move somewhere else. That's the thing. That is what Jesus of Nazareth, what Sister was talking about. That is the witness. We need to move our area of comfort. Father John Kunnakal used to say, area of comfort to area of discomfort we need to move.
Just to answer answer to Alok. Recently there was a major seminar in Dharmaram, and one of the paper presenter, Asprit Gaji Lobowala, she said, she put the question, can we have synodality in the church? And her emphatic answer is no. And she has begun the ministry of what she calls irritating ministry. How she, as was referring to, that why didn't we speak about clericalism, for example? She's a kind of firebrand against clericalism. Now coming back to your question, that is to, why is it that we continue to remain in the comfort zones? Pope Francis has been telling us we need to be listening church. First of all, we don't listen to the voices that come from the periphery or say even from this women. The other thing is that we don't listen to the promptings of the Spirit. I think that's the basic question. Of course, the Spirit gives us the inclination or the promptings to move out from the comfort zone. But we tell the Spirit, please keep quiet. We stifle the voices of the Spirit, and that is the reason for us not to move out from our comfort zones. I think that's the answer.
It's more of an observation. Thank you very much, all of you. Whenever I hear of the word Stan Swami, it simply surprises me. My big question is, will this system produce Stan Swami, at least one, or Stan Swamis? If God chooses, certainly. Within the system, unlikely. Off the system, occasionally possible. So, by mistake, one might become Stan Swami, but that will be a mistake, not because of the system. In my opinion. So I see myself as training nurses. If I imagine one of them will become doctor, that can happen by mistake. I am training nurses. So if I am dreaming that they should become wonderful doctors, I think I am mistaking somewhere. So people are here to be wonderful sacramental priests, and they will managers and administrators. And that's why they are here. And if I think I can shape the motivations and the transformation of the people, I think that's a dream. God can do occasionally changing the people from A to B, but people here are going to be A more or less. So there will be wonderful guys, very good nurses, but I don't expect them to be doctors at all. That will be a big problem also if they become doctors.
Yes. More observation. Yes, Vivek.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation from four of you. I'd like to ask a general question, from observation also. Both those who are in formation and those who are forming also, there is one aspect we are very much afraid of the change. Even if it is a small change, we tend to say that it is because of the tradition which is being followed. We can't do this, we can't do that. Maybe is there that threat is there that are we afraid of change? That is one thing. Not only those who are in formation, both the sides. And also another thing is do we really have a proper introspection about oneself and also the system which we are in? When it comes to anything talking about others, especially now it has become a fashion of talking about Hindutva, maybe something else. But when it comes, do we have real discussion about what is going on in the formation, why we are facing these difficulties? Do we have real introspection which is going on? Because when it comes to others, we simply ask many questions. But do we really introspect oneself or about the system which we are in? That is the question.
Yes, something related to what Stan mentioned. I think we must distinguish between training and formation. There are two different words which sometimes interchangeably used for formation. Training and formation. Training is time bound, certain years that you spend, and the training gives you certain skills. Say for example, a surgeon will study for 4 years and he will become a skilled doctor. Does it change his behavior? No. So if one is being trained to become a priest. There will be the time with 4 years or 3 years of theology. One will learn to say the Mass, but he may not be able to celebrate the Mass because he will have the skillful in terms of celebrating the Mass, but the formation takes place in the person, in the changing of the behavior. Training doesn't really change the behavior of a person. Formation does. And so if you are forming ourselves, possibly there should be some change. If not, we are just training ourselves just like a nurse trains in a nursing training center. Thank you.
Yes.
Women who are teaching in the seminary, they could tell us something, the professors, women professors who are teaching that. How do you feel? Because you know both women in the formation house and then men here, you are better people sometimes, you are observation.
Before that, I would also like to just ask Sister Inigo. She's been into this ministry for so many years. Recently, I think this Dicastery of Consecrated Life, they have produced this some kind of survey, and the women religious, men religious also, and the priests have a different percentage of why they are leaving the institutions. And for women, it has come above 40% of them are leaving because of they feel some kind of suffocation in the institutions. Some kind of like, somewhat like we are only talking about that freedom, the equality and liberty, somewhat taken away from them. So they are feeling suffocated. So therefore, nearly 40% of women who have left, the reason is this. They are, instead of thriving, they are feeling suffocated, or some of them just surviving. So my question to Sister is like, how will, because this is within the structure, so how will the church collectively take the effort for women religious, I'm sure men religious have the same different percentage, to break through that and even make this contribution alive in our day-to-day living. The bullying goes on within the formation, and what you asked us, like my experience living with, like being with our scholastic and seminarians here, within a short period of time, I see a lot of generation change. The classroom, the way the students, like the way our young people are today, is so different than what we were there, like in a few years back. So for me, I feel that even Jesuits have this, the spiritual guide and the who will be like one person who guiding them, and the one, or in the formation the novitiate have master and the novices, and now the new things are coming out like accompaniment. People have to accompany the formies. But what I see the young people, being with them, that they're looking for friends now. They're looking for somebody who can be friend with them. I think the young people will open up to the formators only when they are friends. Now I think the accompaniment also will have that up and down kind of thing. Like I am accompanying, I'm accompanying you. So somewhere, because I'm living more with the Jesuits here, somewhere that breakthrough, how could the formators be friend to our new generation? I don't know that they can speak for themselves, but what I can get even from our young sisters is they're looking for friends who can treat them equally, who can give them, when they fall, to say, I also had fallen one time, so it's okay. Some kind of, otherwise it's only superficial. I feel they're doing it, coming to the spiritual guide, coming to the formators, because there's a timetable, there's a routine. So the cry, even though the cry from the new generation is, be our friend, walk with us as equals. Because I think new generations are not ready to being told anymore. It is a fact. So there where I see the changing generation, and the new formations need to be put in, everybody has to put an effort.
Yes, Father Francis.
Thank you, wonderful reflection. That I'll just like to chip in some ideas. We talked about formation, changing structures, systems and all that. We changed the system, came down from the hills and we settled here. 50 years have passed. There also hearts were transformed. Here too, it can transform hearts. This is where we can go on talking about the systems and structures until the parousia. But unless and until the heart itself changes and that formation can come from within. This is what I think Sister Inigo pointed out. We need to be mystics. If that does not happen, any amount of prophetic provincials or bishops will not be able to change unless the person changes from within. Thank you.
Okay, the last question, clarification. Okay, one more. Okay, that's Santosh.
Thank you, Sister Inigo, for your reflections, and Fathers Jen, Joseph, and Edwin. There is a human tendency, while critiquing the present, we glorify the past and we condemn to the core the present. That is also happening in the formation. So that has hampered many, especially the religious women congregations. Many have left in the recent past because still the seniors are holding on to the power. The younger youngsters are not given anything. So it can also hamper in the men religious congregation also. So how do we reconcile with this? The young and the old, glorifying the past and condemning the present. How far it has affected and how can we merge that? Thank you.
I just remembered one debate in Papal Seminary that is between professors. And actually they were divided into two camps. Some of them said that we are trained to be professors. I am trained in one subject and I will teach. And the other group said, no, you are professor, okay, but you're also supposed to be a formative. But the other group said, no, I'm not trained to be a professor. I did my 7 years of doctorate to teach a particular subject and I am good at that. So actually sister spoke about the formation of the formators. So sometimes our institutions, we send a priest for his licentiate, doctorate, he comes and then we ask him, he's expert in epistemology, expert in Gospel of Mark and Luke, but suddenly we say, no, now you have to be formator, you have to accompany, you have to form others. But where was that training? He has done only his licentiate and doctorate. So suddenly that, you are not, but you are trained to teach. You are expert, you are done research, you are writing books and papers, but what about this aspect of formation? So that debate was there among the professors and they were divided. Many said, yeah, this is just, ADF has sent me here. Actually, he told me also to teach. But then suddenly he said, now you have to be also formator. I'm not trained to be a formator, I'm here to teach. So that debate and that aspect of training of the formators and formation of the formators spoken by Sister also.
Thanks, Father TJ. The last intervention, Brother Oscar.
First question to Sister Inigo. Sister, I'd like to thank you for wonderfully presenting your paper and how we look at theology, perspective in formation. As you said yesterday, God heard the cry of the people and he gave occasion to Moses. And when Moses went to approach the problem, he depended on God. And that's how his vocation went on about. And many prophets in the Old Testament and the New Testament, how people depended on God. Now, the situation is such, we don't depend, everything is given. So the dependence, the providence of God is something lacking in our generation. So how do we approach it? The second question to my province man. Father, you said that accompaniment is an art and not science.
very often we are compared to the past generation in the field of study, in the field of ministry. We were at that time like that, you are like this. We like to know, not pointing out we are going wrong, where we have gone wrong. Somebody to accompany our sister Pravina said, a friendly person to tell us where we are wrong. The reaching out the hand is missing, rather than pointing out the fingers are there. So kindly address this one.
There are many factors why people are leaving. Many factors. From the time of Jesus, Jesus had 12 and one novice left there also. So, with all his good examples. So we cannot blame the formator Jesus there. And today, even the screening, all cannot be for this life. But we want numbers. And more than numbers, we take pride in saying, now we have got big numbers. Is this life possible for everybody? Second, once you join, everything free. Anything given free, we don't respect it. Because we don't lose anything, we only gain after joining also. There also we need to think about, can we work and then we can earn and then we can also be formed during the work itself. Otherwise completely you stop. Even of your age outside, morning till evening they work very hard. Then also what they get is not enough. But here, nothing we do, but we get everything. This formation will not help us for a long time. You can change the subjects, you can change the places, but unless you change this kind of formation, hard work is not there. Worldliness has entered. All types of gadgets we have here. I mean, very easily we can get it and we have the freedom to use it. So these kind of things, lot of factors we need to look into today. We are serious. Even sometimes we can call Brahma Kumaris to teach. You know, their way of teaching, they are grounded in the reality of Indian context. They are not talking about religion. They are not talking about particular religion. They are talking about today's values. So many young people are attracted. I mean, millions of people are the followers of these people within a few years' time. So we can learn from them, we can ask other people. So maybe I would have been happy if one brother could have been here on the panel also. So maybe you would have shared also what you expect for this theological formation. Only we are saying for you, and you have no voice here to say it. Maybe respecting the brothers. Today we are talking so much about friendship model. Everywhere we are talking about, not a high or lower. So listening to each other like this. In the family this is happening today. Parents are like friends to the children. So they accept it. But here still I know. What do you know? You listen. Otherwise you have more fear also for your ordination. Whereas women have no fear like that. If you don't accept, we will leave. That's all. So, but all these so many factors, it's good that we are all thinking that way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oscar, for the question that you mentioned. That is, accompaniment is an art and not a science, simply because many things, one may have the degree of accompaniment or counseling, or for that matter, the spiritual direction, but one has to develop this art of walking the talk and also giving a kind of a hand-holding to the other. And that's precisely what I mentioned, that the formators ought to be able to lead the person, leading in the sense of not being a kind of superior, but somebody who has gone through the same journey, and therefore he or she knows as to what the journey is like. And as it has been said with regard to the formators or the professors, it ought to be so, because a student, when the professor is teaching, he or she is not only listening to the words that are being spoken, but the way that is being spoken, the way it is being addressed to the students. There are many things which are unspoken, yet the students observe, and then they begin to realize, oh, this is the kind of person that I wish to be, or this is the kind of person I do not want to be. And so when somebody is teaching in the classroom also, there are many things goes on in terms of the formation, both for the positive and for the negative. But when I mentioned that accompaniment is more in terms of hand-holding and
listening to the other and being able to lead the person in the right direction. Okay, one could be not that the other knows, but having the spiritual conversation that they discern as to what ought to be the right direction. That's how I would look at that. Accompaniment is an art and not a science. One may have the degree, but he or she may not be able to accompany the other. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, fathers, brothers, sisters, scholastics, and all those who took part in the discussion. Special thanks, word of thanks to the panelists for doing an excellent job and helping us through this reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father Valan, for moderating this session in an efficient manner. We'll give a round of applause for the We have now come to the end of the sessions of the second day of the SWARNA JAYANTI Seminar. I hope the sessions of the day were intellectually stimulating and inspiring for each one. We shall meet again tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the same venue. As you leave the hall, there will be tea and snacks served on the ground floor. Have a good evening. Thanks.